So hopefully everyone else is on their way. But since it's 10 o'clock or 10:01 and y'all are here, let's go ahead and get started. Dan, are you starting us off today?
Yes, I am. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Hackathon Day number 4, session number 1. It's a beautiful day here in Provo, Utah. The sun is out over the mountains, peeking in through my window. I hope you're all having a good, whatever time of day it is for you, morning, afternoon, or evening. Appreciate you being here. And just again, thanks for all you're doing. We know that HydroLearn would be significantly less successful without the great fellows. And Eileen, sorry, not yet. I'm like, I even took my daughter on we went out boating the other night to see if maybe jumping through the waves would, no, I don't think that was the intention, but we did go boating, and secretly I was wondering if that would make baby say, hey, time to be born. Well, welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. And the schedule for today is as follows. Session number 1 this morning, constructive alignment and learning activities. It's one of these educational terms that it might take you a minute to wrap your head around, but it's cool when it starts making sense to you, constructive alignment. And we'll talk a little bit about the HydroLearn module feedback tool, which is a tool we'll use and you will use to get feedback on your module. And then in session number 2, which will be late this afternoon for me, so you'll have a work session in between, we'll share, give feedback, and revise your learning activities in HydroLearn. So the schedule is somewhat similar to yesterday in that respect. And here are the goals for the end of today. So we've talked a little bit about how, yeah, we definitely would like optimally to see you all get all this work done during the work sessions and complete your learning module during the work sessions, which I still feel is very doable. So toward that end, I think if you continually kind of work toward these objectives each day, then it makes it more possible to do that. So by the end of today's workshop, if you have designed, you will know you are succeeding or you're on schedule if you've designed 2 or more learning activities that align with the objectives and the content with learning objectives. Have at least 1 entire learning activity in HydroLearn, including results, templates, rubrics, screenshots, etc. So think about that this afternoon. Maybe divide and conquer with your partner and have one of you develop the results template, and one of you develop the material or work on it together in parts, bits and pieces. Use, by the way, that second bullet, at least 1. So if you get all 3 of them, 2 of them, or 3 of them done, all the better. But really focus on 1 solid learning activity that somebody could do from beginning to end. And then by the end of today, we're hoping that you will have used the HydroLearn module feedback tool to give yourself a bit of an assessment on the work that you've done. The feedback tool sort of walks you through some of the things that you should be and we should be looking for in your module. And it's a chance to kind of self-reflect and look at the things you've done and see how well it aligns with what is expected and hoped for. So that is our introduction, and yeah, it's going to be a fun and exciting, I don't know about exciting. Can it be exciting, Melissa? Let's make it exciting. It's going to be a fun and an exciting workshop today. So with that, I will turn the time over to, back to you, Melissa.
Sure. So Jenny just put the URL in.
Oh yeah, that's right. We were going to do this this kind of, yeah, go ahead. So this is a feedback opportunity for you just to do something fun for us to get to know you a little bit better again.
Yeah, so we know COVID-19 is still somewhat of an issue, right? In countries where right, well, obviously it's still somewhat of an issue. Great point. So you might need to refresh, Louis. I think I didn't have the page loaded. Or is that still not working?
It's not working.
That's interesting. So it's working for some people because I see some popping up. So, oh, that's because my name is misspelled in the link that I sent you. So I'll just copy that and send it again.
I think there's only one L in your name.
Yeah, yep, that would be the problem.
I don't know if you knew that, but I thought I would just let you know about how to spell your name.
Thanks. All right, so now we see some of those pins popping up. South Africa. I'm wondering who populated or who pinned South Africa. That's where Dave is from. Oh, Alex, nice. Have you been there before, Alex? I mean, you're in Zambia right now, right? Nice. All right. Oh, I'm seeing lots of great places pop up there.
I don't know who selected Alaska, but I thoroughly support your decision. I just got back from there and it was so hard to leave.
Alaska to southern Louisiana. That must have been a shock to the system.
Oh, but a very pleasant one. You could walk outside and you didn't immediately start sweating. It was so nice. Who knew? But the mosquitoes are way worse up there. Like I thought we had it bad. Oh no, 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 no.
I'm calling shenanigans. I was in a swamp yesterday morning, and I must have got 30 bites. I don't know.
Okay. I used to be a wetland ecologist and I've spent a lot of times in swamps and marshes. No, Alaska was miserable. Miserable. And they're huge. They're like tiny birds. Ugh.
Yeah, Siberia is an interesting choice. Who pinned up there?
That was me, completely on accident. So I was like trying to move my screen or something, and then I was committed. So Siberia it is.
Oh, that's too funny. See, you can't change your choice. I thought I had made that changeable.
Yeah, it's all right though. I haven't been there, so I'm sure it's beautiful.
Well, Josh, that was a binding decision, and you did win. You did win the lottery. So I've actually got our secretary already getting the tickets for you. So
I leave next thing tomorrow morning.
Just wait 100 years, and with climate change, it will be beautiful. Palm trees will be growing.
Right.
So I know most of you are, or many of you are engineers, I guess. I'm an earth scientist, and my premise is, as an earth scientist, I have to know this planet really well everywhere, right? So I'm actually one of probably not many people who has done research on all continents, including Antarctica. So it's really fun to be an earth scientist and, you know, really getting to know the whole place.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's neat, Martin.
Anyone else done research on all continents? Do you count them as 7 continents or 5, Martin? Different cultures count them differently.
I count them all. So Antarctica and South America, whatever.
I just know some countries or some cultures consider North and South America to be one continent, and others count them as 2 separate continents. Nice. All right, well, there's some fun places in there. And I really enjoyed this group because there's not too much in Europe. So kind of a fun deviation of all around the world. Who picked Bangladesh?
Oh, that's me. I'm from Bangladesh. Yeah, I haven't been
Oh.
there for quite a lot of time. So yeah, it would
We'd
be
have to
good
chat
visit.
about that, Kazi. I lived in Dhaka for 2 years.
Oh, I'm from Dhaka. I lived there for 25 years. So before I moved to here. So
Very nice. Very cool.
yeah.
I've been there also about 15 times, you know, working on
Oh.
arsenic in drinking water in Bangladesh for many years.
Yeah, that's a major like water quality concern back there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Who knows? Maybe all three of you ran into each other at a grocery
maybe.
store or I don't know.
Mhm.
Where people run into. I was gonna say Walmart, but I don't know if you have Walmart there. So maybe wherever you run into each other at.
Yeah, well, we didn't have Walmart when I used to live there. I don't know about now, but they might have opened something. Yeah, but probably not yet.
Yeah. Not when I was there.
On a beach.
But there's a good Nando's.
Yeah, we have like a couple of Nando's outlets, but peri peri chicken is pretty famous.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Doug here to talk to y'all about constructive alignment.
All right, so I know probably many of you are dreaming about constructive alignment now because it's been talked about so much, but we wanted to go through one more time just to highlight a few points. The first thing is we have this great example from a previous team of fellows where they came up with this really cool idea of how to track their learning objectives all the way through the learning activity. And I think it facilitated them also having good opportunities to see how that connections would be made all the way through, including the development of the rubric. So let me just show you part of that. So this here is a Google Doc that has the content of their learning activity. So you'll see the first, I guess, best practice or something we're encouraging is, as many of you are doing, is to put the level of blooms, but they have all of their learning objectives articulated here at the top. The thing that I think we thought was interesting or helpful, something you may consider doing for yours, is that as they go through the rest of their learning activity, they're referencing back to the learning objectives. So it's really clear what the results are and how those connect to the learning objectives. And if you go down even all the way through to the summary questions, there's a clear connection to the learning objectives. So we thought that was a helpful thing that you might consider doing as you continue to refine your module. All right, so as we dig back into, whoops, let me get my window straight here. So with constructive alignment, as we know, we're becoming experts in this. We begin with the end in mind. We clearly articulate those learning objectives. As we know, this constructive alignment really are the bones of a strong activity. That's why we're spending so much time on it. So we know as you've done that, you've started fleshing out those learning activities and thinking about those assessments that provide the evidence that the students have really met those learning objectives. And as we go through later today and throughout the rest of the week, you'll start building out that other leg of this tripod, which are those instructional activities that get them to develop those things you're trying to assess. So I want you to think back to yesterday. Melissa shared with you this module, and let me minimize my screen. She brought up the learning module, learning activity in two windows. So here on the left, she brought up the learning objectives in one screen, and on the right, all of the details of the learning activity. And she kind of guided you through thinking about the learning objectives and how those show up, from the rubric and all the way down through the instructional activities, and then all the way down to the rubric at the bottom, or the summary questions. So we wanted to have you do something similar with your module now. So I'm going to share my screen or maximize this. So we'd like you to do now for the next 30 minutes, we're going to put you back into your groups, your working teams. And we want you to pick one learning activity, an assessment from your module, and do like I just showed you, opening the learning objectives in one window and that window and the activity in another, and kind of go through and really think through the connections between the learning activity, those objectives, and the rubrics all the way through. So as you're going through that, the questions you could ask yourself are all the learning objectives present in the learning activity? Is the activity assessing only those learning objectives, or are there opportunities for other objectives you might add in? So maybe there's things they're doing in the learning activity that you could add additional objectives to. And finally, does the rubric capture how well students really demonstrate that they're meeting those learning objectives? So it's one last opportunity to really go back through. I guess it's not the last opportunity, because you know how constructive alignment is throughout this course, but it'll give you a chance to go and do that. So we're going to drop you into your teams. I think, are we ready to do that, Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so any questions before we send you off?
Let's make sure that they have the slides. Jenny, are these slides in?
I can do that right now. Okay, they have a copy now.
All right, so I copied and pasted the instructions into the chat, so you have them there. And also there's a copy of the slides in your fellows folder. So, because there's a lot of steps to these directions. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes in your breakout rooms with your partners, looking at the constructive alignment between your learning objectives and your learning activity that you've been working on, following those same steps like Doug just went over. Are there any questions about what we're going to do next before Jenny opens the rooms?
In the last message you sent in the chat box, you said if a subsection has 2 learning objectives, then all objectives should be present across the 2, not all in one. What do you mean by that?
So if a subsection has 2 learning activities, so for instance, some people are taking a learning activity and breaking it into chunks. So if that's, so say a section has 5 learning objectives, okay. Every learning activity doesn't have to meet all 5. You could have 2 in one learning activity and 3 in the other, or.
Right. All right, got it. Thanks.
So you might not have all your learning activities kind of developed yet, so you might not see that, but you could keep in mind, oh, make sure we cover learning objective 2 in another learning activity. Great question, Kazi. Other questions? All right, Jenny, you want to go ahead and open the rooms for us? It must all be hard at work because no one's coming back, even though they only have 10 seconds left. They're all going to ride it out. All right, welcome back, everyone. So Jenny is going to go ahead and put a link in the chat to the poll everywhere. Jenny, if you could make it a live link, that would be helpful, I think. And what I want to kind of know, or how we're going to wrap up this conversation, is doing this activity, comparing your learning objectives with your learning activity, with the rubric and everything you're doing. What did you learn about constructive alignment? Kind of not necessarily about your learning objectives and your learning activity, but what is a principle or an idea about constructive alignment that you took up from this activity that you can apply going forward? So another way to think of that is, what's a generalization, something you can generalize about constructive alignment that when you create your next learning activity, you can keep in mind from the start. So that's what you're going to enter into the poll everywhere. And that link is in the chat. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to get their answers in before I show them on the screen. And I see 5 people have typed in their answer. Thank you for that. What did you learn about constructive alignment that you can apply going forward? All right, we have 25 participants in here today and 8 results. I'm going to give a few more minutes for people to kind of think and type up their answers. So it seems like there's probably about 15 people still thinking of their response. So as these come up on the screen, read through them. Great, lots of great answers in here. Probably most of them better than anything I would have said. So I'm glad I asked you all this question. Several people kind of made this idea of stepping back, this kind of taking a step back and looking at them again. And similarly, that idea of iteration, coming back to it, coming back to it, coming back to it. You'll spend a lot of time doing that. We'll spend a lot of time doing that in this workshop. And then in a year, if you come back to this module and look at it again, you'll notice places where it's not aligned perfectly and you'll still make tweaks. Like I said, I'm a perfectionist and I don't like things not to be done. And this is one of those things that's never really done. So it's not my favorite process, but I like it. It is really important to know what I'm moving towards. Whoever wrote this, learning objectives, informed learning activities, informed learning objectives, informed learning activities really is hitting at that cyclical nature. And I like how you did that, in a linear form, but it's still hitting that cyclical. Sticking to a consistent reference point. So I don't know if you remember, but on day 1, I said that you may have had learning objectives for your courses in the past that you kind of kept in your head. And the problem with that is that if you keep it in your head, it's not a consistent reference point because, right, our memories can shift and what we want can shift and we don't even really realize it. And that's where writing them down and ensuring that alignment really makes sense. They're really needed for effective learning activities. Some people in some of the rooms that I was visiting were starting to chunk out smaller learning objectives, and others were, where did I see it? Adding conditions to their learning objectives to make them more specific to what it was they were actually looking for in the learning activities. I think those are 2 really important takeaways, that if you can chunk out your learning objectives into smaller bits, that makes it easier to assess and know exactly what you're looking for. This one made me smile. I like the idea of a coherent story. And a coherent story, they really tell a coherent story from my perspective of what you value as an educator. What do you value that your students know? and looking at this constructive alignment can help you identify missing learning objectives. So one of the groups that I was in, what they were asking students to do didn't quite align with the learning objective that they had matched it with. And so they decided they needed to write out really a new learning objective, because if it's important enough to assess students on, then it's important enough to make it a learning objective. Awesome. So many great ideas. I think that you all are really moving on the right path. And I will tell you that constructive alignment gets easier as you move forward. And so as you're doing your next learning activities, you'll notice it's starting to come together a little more quickly. So we are going to share with you the HydroLearn module feedback tool. So throughout this week, I've taken screenshots of pieces of it and showed it to you on different slides, because we wanted to chunk it out so that you were seeing kind of manageable bites of it. But this is the feedback tool that we will use when we review and give you feedback on your module. So in your fellows folder, actually, we pulled it out of the fellows folder because we wanted to change the way you make a copy of it. Thanks, Jenny, for highlighting that and opening it for them. So when you open the HydroLearn module feedback tool, you'll get this message that will say, would you like to make a copy of it? So we've changed the settings. There's this cool feature in Google Docs where you can make it so someone can't open a document, they can only make a copy of it. Which helps when you don't want everyone editing your documents. So the HydroLearn module feedback tool, hopefully you're all able to see it and have it open, is divided up into some sections. So one is relevant content, right? Your module should have content that's relevant to your audience, undergraduate or early graduate students. And then we're going to be looking for authentic tasks. That shouldn't be a surprise. Clear learning objectives, engaging and accessible instruction. And so I'm going to mention that we're going to look for that. And that is the focus of Friday through Wednesday. So for the next 4 days, starting tomorrow, we'll be talking about engaging and accessible instruction. And then the last thing we're going to be looking for is clear and engaging learning activities. And so you have hopefully no words in there are surprising to you. This says learning activity X, because what we do when we're kind of doing the feedback form, when we're reviewing, is we just make multiple copies of this section. If you have 5 learning activities, we make 5 copies of the section. If you have 7, we make 7. If you have 2, we make 2. So that's why there's an X there. And similarly for sections, this gets replicated. So we wanted to give this to you today because we wanted you, one, we want to be transparent. I can't stand it when I submit to a journal and then they assess me on something I had no idea they were even going to be thinking about. So we want you to, I want to give you some time. There's a lot of content in here, but none of it should really be new. So I want you to read that. And then you're going to, when you're done reading it, you're going to go into the Padlet, which Jenny just put in the chat because she's awesome. And you're going to respond to these 2 questions. What do you notice? And that's what do you notice about the module feedback tool? And then what questions do you have? So what do you notice? What do you wonder? What questions do you have for us? So this is the task we're going to do just now. We're going to do it. We're going to stay here in this room. So we're just going to give you some quiet time to be reading over that module feedback tool and posting to the Padlet. What questions do you have about what we're doing now?
How much time do we have?
Great question. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes on this activity. Thanks, Nate. We're trying to do these cute little button things in the corner to keep ourselves in time. All right, so we're reading the module feedback tool and we're posting to the Padlet. What do you notice? What do you wonder? I see a lot of great questions and noticings popping up. We're going to spend about 3 more minutes working on this. So if you haven't had a chance to put your noticings or questions, please do. If you have, please make sure you've read others. And some of you have already noticed that you can like things that you agree with, and that you can add comments to other people's posts. So if you've already kind of finished, you can go through and see what the others have said. All right, so that's been about 15 minutes. I see some really excellent noticings and wonderings. So I'm going to use these to kind of guide our conversation. Yeah, so I'm not going to go through them kind of one at a time. I'm going to pick some of the things that stuck out to me. And if I overlook yours or don't bring something up you want to talk about, feel free to just jump in with that. I do want to point out that this is, this is only like a page and a half. It's much simpler than the version that we use. The version that we use is in a Microsoft form, which provides us with lots and lots of space to add comments and feedback. So some people noted that it looks like a checklist, which is nice. And there are check boxes in the Microsoft form, so we can just kind of check this is here, this is there. But some other people noticed, well, what about the quality and what about you know, the quality of the content that's presented or the quality of the videos. So all of that does get addressed in the feedback and comments. I think I mentioned yesterday, it does take me 3 to 5 hours to review each module. And we always have an education person, an engineer, content expert, and technical, so a student who's really familiar with the technical side of things. So you will always get 3 reviews after you submit to us. So that was one kind of quick thing I wanted to point out. I noticed that Syed had, I think it was Syed had asked if it would have been possible to share this earlier. And so I made a choice not to share this with you earlier. However, you'll see on day 1, I took a screenshot of just this section of the learning objectives so that you would see that. On day 2, I took a screenshot of just this section of the authentic tasks. So you have seen the pieces of this, but I didn't want to give you the whole thing because it looks like a long and daunting checklist maybe for someone in their first day. And so for some people, you're still probably thinking, well, I would have preferred it earlier. And that's just the choice I made, and that's why I made it. Other things. So hopefully I addressed, this is really about, because it looks like a checklist, it looks like it's about the presentation, but that feedback section is where we give a lot of feedback on the content. Let's see, somewhat reasonable, even somewhat minimal expectations. I kind of agree with that one, but we wanted to kind of set one goalpost because we know that everyone is going to be creative and do things slightly in their own way. Let's see. There could be a question if time expectation is appropriate for the module. That absolutely is something that we think about, and that's something that the technical experts, the students who look at the module are really thinking about. But it's not on the checklist, that's true. So let me delve into some of the questions. So first off, there are instructions for accessibility and there aren't any for colorblind people, which is really ironic because I'm one of those rare colorblind women. So it is quite funny that we don't have those, and by funny, I mean ironic. And so I think that is definitely a good thing to add. And so yeah, we will take that feedback up and add it. And as far as about having high and low resolution images for people with slow internet connection, I back channel message that to Jenny, and she is looking into different options for that. So I think that's a wonderful suggestion, or those are both wonderful suggestions. So there were then some questions about authentic tasks and especially authentic, thanks for the suggestion, Kazi. Under authentic tasks, there was one question about having students respond to and evaluate different options, and then is that the same as being higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy? So there is some overlap, right? If you're evaluating, that is one of the levels of Bloom's taxonomy, but you could be at the assessing level or creating level and not necessarily be making different options. And that kind of goes to another person's question is, you have to meet every single tick box, and you don't. What we're looking for is like enough of these things that make it an authentic task. So you don't have to tick every single one of these items. Another question was why authentic tasks are separate from clear and engaging learning activities. And actually within the form itself that we fill out, the Microsoft form, I believe the authentic tasks are just right above the learning activities. So it's all in the same section. So we do give feedback all at once because those authentic tasks, which I think is what that question was about, are really situated within the learning activities. Another point that came up here, another question that came up was which is a question that came up in the small groups too. So I apologize for not addressing this sooner, is how to integrate lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy into an authentic task. So learning objectives that evaluate lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy, if they make sense to incorporate in your authentic task, then you should do that. But if it makes more sense to use a check your understanding question, then you can do it that way. So lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy don't all have to be integrated into your authentic task. They just have to be assessed somewhere within that section. Closed captioning and videos, we're going to talk about sometime between now and Wednesday. It's actually quite easy. And Jenny will teach us about that. Instruction leading up to a task. A great question. That is a great balance question. We'll talk about that the next few days. And the answer is enough. Right? It depends on your students, where they are, their background knowledge. And so that's where you creating this to actually use in your courses is kind of key, because you know how your students are and what they need. A balance between clear directions and ill-defined for higher order tasks. So the ill-defined really has to come into that where we're assessing higher levels of Bloom. So if we're assessing a lower level of Bloom's, which is to be able to create a hydro, just replicate the process to create a hydrograph in HEC-HMS, let's say, then I can give them all the steps. I just need them to replicate it. That's a lower level part of the task. But then if I'm wanting them to evaluate different detention basin models, then that's the higher level, and that's the ill-defined part. So not all parts of the task have to be ill-defined. There's lots of good questions in here that I think we're going to cover over the next couple of days. One is about, but one that we're not, is about the review process. And typically, well, actually, we will cover that in the next couple of days. I think that the PIs need to discuss this to give you a clearer answer. So recognizing that I didn't answer every single question, would you go ahead and put in the chat, how are you feeling? Or actually, let's use the reactions tool in Zoom. What is your kind of reaction to this feedback tool? Does it feel accessible and doable? We're going to modify it for some of the things that you mentioned that may be missing. But yeah, what's your initial? All right, I see a hand up, Sina.
Yeah, I've got a question, and I probably missed this. Is it a basically self-review checklist that we do to review our own module, or is it something that you will review our module once we have a complete first draft of the entire thing?
Yeah, great question. I can talk about that part of the review process. So when you and your partner decide that you have a complete draft of your module and you're ready to submit it, then you submit it to Jenny, your co-PI, your PI, your guides. We'll give you the clear steps, but you submit it to us, and then 3 people review it: your education guide, your content guide, and a tech student. And so you'll get 3 sets of feedback, and then we'll ask you to address the feedback similarly to how you would like a journal review, where you would say, I did this, but you can do it like by adding comments in the Google Docs. It's not double blind or anything. And then you'll address that feedback. We'll take a look at it one more time, and then usually it's good to go from there. All right, Kazi.
Yeah, so going back to Sina's question. So this is this file will be, our modules will be reviewed by 3 people, and we will receive feedback on this form. Is that correct? We don't have to fill up anything at this point, right?
You don't have to fill out anything on this form. We wanted to give it to you so you know exactly what we're looking for, right? So this is our assessment tool, and this is kind of like it's not quite a rubric, but this is our assessment tool. So we want you to have it from the start.
Okay, and when will we get the feedback from the reviewers?
We try to do it within 2 weeks of you submitting your final version.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. Quite
so it all depends on when you give us your final version.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
All right, Sina, you and Kaji are tag teaming. Yeah.
Following up on Kazi, and once we address all the review points and fix everything, then the module will be published on the website and accessible for students right away, right?
Absolutely.
And do we need to sort of like account some embargo time before it's fully accessible to the students? I'm asking because we're teaching next semester, so I want to get a rough timeline for that.
Yeah, so you can make it accessible as soon as that feedback comes in. There's no time, there's no lag time. All right. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Jenny now. She's going to help out where she's going to share address, I think it was Alyssa's question from earlier.
Yes. Oh, okay. So the linking. I am up. Hold on. Let me share my screen. I get distracted when I'm digging out, trying to solve problems. So here we go. Someone asked earlier about how you can link to other sections in your module. And I have it ready for you of how you can do it. So the instructions are here in the slides. You can always reference this, and then I'm going to take you through an example. So let me copy this link down here. Some of you can see what I mean by this, what this looks like in action. Copy that. Okay. So in there is an example of what this jump to ID looks like in action. So inside of, this is my studio view here. This is where I've put it. So I'm going to switch to live or preview. I haven't published. So what I've done is I've set up, in essence, it's like a hyperlink that will, once clicked, will take the user to the point where I directed it to. So here, I just decided to make a jump to the top of this. I think this is the template, module template. So when I click this, oh, come on, seriously? This was working last night. This is not cool. This is making me look bad. Let me try it here. Okay, so that's how it's going to be. I'll get back to you on that later, guys.
Does it need to be published?
I'm not sure, but you're right. Let me try. Publish, view live instead. Done. Okay, great. It works. So thank you for that suggestion, whoever that was. I did it. It tried though. Okay. I'm not sure, folks. I'll get back to you on that.
All right, so the takeaway here is that there is a way to put hyperlinks from one point in your module to another. And it normally doesn't give us so many issues. So Jenny will fix that, figure out what's going on, and she will walk us through that in our afternoon session. So now we're going to go ahead and break into our working groups. We're going to ask you to make any needed revisions to your learning activity based on the feedback either that you received yesterday or what you figured out today from doing your constructive alignment analysis. We want you to revise your learning activities as needed, also keeping in mind the HydroLearn module feedback tool. So knowing that that's what we're going to be looking for, how can you can use that to help you. And then to continue develop learning activities and starting to add those into HydroLearn. And remember that the activities, remember that our objectives for today is for you to have designed 2 or more learning activities. So these could be in Google that align with your learning objectives and content. And we want you to have at least 1 entire learning activity in HydroLearn, including the results, templates, rubrics, screenshots. And you'll pick one of these things to share today in your content groups.
I got it to work. Shall we try this again, folks?
Yes, let me let Jenny share.
So that was user error on my part. I apologize. It's rare, it happens, but you witnessed it. So here we go. Jump to AD. My intention is just to jump to the top of the module. So I'll give you an idea of what that looks like in action. I'll go back down here. I'm just going to click on this. It's going to take me to the top of my module with no problems whatsoever. Success. So this is what the jump to ID will do. It'll just load the page that you navigated your user to. And here's how you create it. So to do the jump to ID, you must use an HTML text box. And to get there, you just do add new component, HTML text. Of course, come in here, click edit. And let me get my jump ready. Let's just say we're going to go back to the summary again. Why not? So I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to go get the unique ID for my summary page, and I have to do that within Studio. So what I'm going to do, wish I could open in a new tab. I'm going to go grab that ID, and regardless of what unit you are in, everyone has that unique location ID, and it's always on the right hand side in the panel on the side. Right here, unit location. So this is what I need right here. I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to go back to where I was. Any moment. Go back to my HTML text box, hit edit. I'm going to hyperlink this text right here just by hitting the same old hyperlink button. And here's where I'm going to put the jump _to_ID/ and then paste my unique location ID here. Click OK. It's hyperlinked. I'm going to save it. I'm going to publish. I'm going to view live. And I'm going to go make sure that this works. Here we go. Ta-da! Easy as pie. So, remember, if you want to duplicate this again, the instructions are here. You'll notice that when I typed in my URL, I did not include these carets. So when you actually do it, only do the jump to ID with the slashes and then just directly paste the location ID of where you want to go. And that's it. Haroon, you have a question?
I just had a comment. I'm actually maybe a question too. Do you have to publish to test it, or you can go in the preview mode and just test it?
Let's find out. I did it just for the sake of I knew that worked, and I didn't want to embarrass myself again. So for science, let's see if preview does it. Yes, preview works as well.
All right, so we wanted you to have that trick in your back pocket as you are working and developing your HydroLearn learning activities this afternoon. So any questions about our goals for the next, let's see, 4 hours and 24 minutes. So that's 4 o'clock my time. I don't know what time it will be where you are, but 4.5-ish hours from now. Any questions before we head off to our groups?
Yeah, I have a question since the publish button was brought up before. What does it do when we push publish? Should we, when we are implementing, when we're importing our stuff, or not? Is that suddenly open to everybody, or what does it mean?
You can absolutely publish right now. And I say that because all of your modules are hidden from our course listings right now. So publish, don't publish, it doesn't make a difference for you right now. That completely changes when your module is live. You'll notice this caution right here. The last published version of this unit is live. So if you publish any changes and your students are using it, it changes their experience. So if you find a typo, okay, let's say it's live, you found a typo, you fix it, you press publish, it doesn't make that big of a difference. But if you're making a significant change in the middle of a live module, just consider twice at that time before you publish. Does that make sense?
All right, great question, Martin.
Also, isn't there something about, Jenny, you can have a published module, but if the start date, if the end date, start date and end date are passed, then it also does not appear to the public.
That makes it archived. In essence, we do that when we retire a module.
Okay. So that's like another way to kind of have it be published to public, but not public. Published, but not public.
Sure, I wouldn't suggest, you can do that if you want. It just moves it to this page over here. However, for all of the modules that are active, you don't need to archive it. Okay. Basically, just archive is the closest you're going to get to delete.
Gotcha.
All right, so in summary, all your modules right now are set up that you can publish and it won't affect anyone.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go ahead and open the breakout rooms. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to stay here a minute and ask them.
Melissa, one more question. For technical help, can you remind us what is the procedure? Just going back to the main room, or should we try to contact one of those people that you listed yesterday?
So it depends on the complexity of your question, but coming back to the main room is probably the easiest, or using the ask for help button. All right, room should be open. So if you have a question, you're free to say, and if you want to go and get started, you are free to join your rooms.
There are slides, and